Welcome, everyone. Good evening. It's really lovely to see you all here. And thank you for signing up, even if you're not present live, if you're watching this later. It's been really wonderful to see how much interest there is in Ayurveda and these beautiful, beautiful, timeless teachings of Ayurveda that can really transform lives. Ayurveda is a path that I have followed in the last few years, and it is really amazing to witness the transformation that I have seen in myself and also in the people that I have had the opportunity and the privilege to work with. Very recently, just a couple of days ago, I came back from India, where I was staying and studying with my teacher again, and also taking treatments in an Ayurvedic clinic. And honestly, within the span of 3, not even 4 weeks that I was there, the change in people's health, physical and mental health that I was able to witness once again, was incredible. It's simply incredible. So there will be some of you who I have met and I know very well by now. Welcome. And there are a few people who will be joining us tonight or watching this later who I haven't had the chance to meet yet. My name is Rada, and I have been a yoga and meditation teacher for 10 years and a practitioner for a lot more than that. And Ayurveda is something that entered my life a little sooner, a little more recently. And Ayurveda is incredibly related to the teachings of yoga because they emerged alongside each other. They are both Vedic sciences, so they have their origins in the Vedas. And the Vedic culture and tradition is predominantly related to what's nowadays India, Sri Lanka, Tibet, Nepal, and yet these are timeless teachings. I consider Ayurveda to be still relevant today, just as much as it has always been. So tonight, in this 1 hour workshop, I'll really try to keep it within the frame of 1 hour because this is the time commitment we've all given to it. We will cover a couple of points on what Ayurveda is. I know that many people are familiar with Ayurveda these days, or at least have heard about it. And if you are here, you probably already have some introduction or some curiosity. We will also look into some simple things that we can implement in our lives that are inspired by the teachings of Ayurveda. And I will also share with you a little bit about the Living Ayurveda program, which is a 10-week program that I run, where I go a lot more in detail about what Ayurveda is and how we can really, really implement it in our life, week by week, day by day. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions and answers. Yet, I really want to encourage you and to invite you, especially those of you who are present here tonight. Feel free to interact. Feel free to raise a hand or to pop a question in the chat box. And I will be very happy to be somewhat guided by your questions, because I really want for this to be relevant to you as well, rather than just something that I think might be relevant or useful for you. So feel free to put questions in the chat box. And before we begin, just for those of you who are already here, would you mind just popping in a short message in the chat? You can find the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Do you already have some idea or some introduction to Ayurveda? Or is this a completely new concept? Is this something that you are just about to be presented to and you've never heard about? Just for me to gather a little bit of idea. Maybe you can just say yes or no. New for you, Karen. Okay. Yeah. How about everyone else? Old, says Christy. Yeah, okay. Also new to Anusha. Good.
Yeah, I actually don't know how to find the chat box. I'm on my phone.
Yeah,
But I've had some experience with a bit of a data, just mainly from like St. Harris and some research and things, but pretty new.
wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Studied Ayurveda intensive in 2014 at Wellpack. Oh, wonderful. That's amazing, Melly. So maybe you would also like to share some of your knowledge. And pretty new to Kali. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I often bring the teachings of Ayurveda into the other things I teach, like yoga and meditation, because as I said, they are so interconnected, beginner's level for Natalia. Okay, wonderful. So we have a very mixed, very mixed range of experience, and that's great. So let's start with the very basic notion of what Ayurveda is. So I already mentioned that Ayurveda is very much related to yoga. That they share the same origins. Some people call them sister sciences. Um, Basically, Ayurveda translates as it's a Sanskrit word. Sanskrit is the ancient language of the Vedas, which is basically the root of all Indo-European languages. So Sanskrit is that old language that the Vedas were written in and that all the Ayurvedic texts are also written in. And some of the terms that are used in Ayurveda come from Sanskrit. Yet I always encourage people not to see that as a language barrier at all, but to see it as an opportunity to tune into that vibration, into the vibration of this beautiful ancient language, because that's the language of all the mantras that you might have encountered in your yoga practice or in any other chanting practice. And in that sense, Sanskrit is a powerful vibrational language. And even just pronouncing words in Sanskrit, like Ayurveda, can be a really beautiful way to attune to that frequency of healing. So, Ayurveda is all about healing. Ayurveda is all about restoring balance. These days, I not avoid, but I am very careful when using the word healing because I consider that in our modern life, we are promoted healing a lot. And even when we don't really need to be healed. And that can create a sense that there is something wrong with us, that we are broken, or that we are, or that we need to be fixed or corrected. And living with that mindset of there is something wrong with me can in itself actually create a lot of unease and disease. So I'm very careful when using the word healing, and I really prefer using words like balance. Because if we are experiencing unease in our body or lack of ease in our body, that simply means that something has shifted out of its original state of balance. The Vedas affirm that we are innately whole and complete. Those of you who have practiced yoga might have heard that beautiful mantra, Purnamada Purnamida, a mantra that affirms our fullness and our wholeness, and which says that we are complete. So, in our true essence, in our true nature, there is wholeness and completeness. And I think that that's important for us to remember. Practices like yoga and meditation can remind us of that innate wholeness and fullness. Yet, because of our day-to-day interaction with the situations in our life, with different conditions in our life, we can lose that sense of wholeness and we can tip a little bit out of balance or out of that state of ease, which is innate and natural for us. So Ayurveda speaks about all the ways in which balance can be restored. And in that sense, it's a healing science. The very word Ayurveda means Ayur meaning or Ayus meaning life and Veda meaning knowledge. So it's the knowledge of life or the science of life. It helps us understand life, understand creation, and understand nature better, so that by knowing ourselves and knowing nature, we can then figure out or intuit or know for ourselves what might be out of balance and what we may be able to do to return to balance, to return to harmony, to return to wholeness and fullness. So, the science of life. It's really beautiful to think about Ayurveda as a science because it is very intuitive and yet very complex. It's both incredibly simple and very much a common sense, and also so profound and so deep, and in a way infinite. And that paradox coexists. There are texts that are written on Ayurveda that one can learn and that one can be versed in, but then there is also an infinite number of situations and conditions that we can find that can never be in a book, that can never be outlined, and that will show us that there is always an exception of the rule. So the best thing that we can really do is to come to know ourselves and what works for us. In that sense, Ayurveda is all about living life to the fullest, to restoring our fullness and restoring a state of maximum or optimum aliveness. It's a living wisdom, let's say. It's an experiential wisdom. And it is really better learned by practicing, by experiencing it ourselves, rather than from book or from theory only, or let's say a scientific research. So it's better to research ourselves, to study ourselves, rather than um, try and learn about life from a book. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that actually reminds me of my initial encounters with Ayurveda and the way I was presented to it. So about 12 years ago, a little over 12 years ago, I landed in a yoga ashram in Mexico, which is where I lived and studied and taught in the first years of my teaching practice. And living in that yoga school, there was a beautiful library of books. And I remember finding a book on Ayurveda on the shelves. And I knew that they were very linked, that yoga and Ayurveda were very linked. So I was quite curious to learn about Ayurveda. So I read right through the book that I found. And it was very easy to start drawing some quick conclusions. So commonly, when we first get presented to Ayurveda, some of the main um, ideas, like the doshas, the three doshas or the three constitutional types, can be outlined. And even if you just visit an Ayurveda website, quite often there is a dosha quiz where, in order for you to purchase a product or to be promoted a certain, um, let's say, cream or oil or whatever, the company might offer you a free dosha quiz, which means get to know your constitution, and then we'll be able to recommend to you the right product. Now, the problem with doing something from a website or getting that knowledge from a website or from a book is that we quite often draw the wrong conclusion. And now I'll tell you what happened to me. So back then, I didn't know myself very well yet. And I read the description of the different body types and body constitutions, and I concluded that I have a certain constitution, which was totally wrong. And because every constitution comes with a certain set of lifestyle recommendations and diet recommendations, I started following a diet that was suggested for the Kapha dosha type, which means that I decided that I will be a raw food vegan for a while. And for 6 months, I only ate raw food, thinking that I was doing something really, really good for my body, for myself, for my health. And basically, what that resulted in was that I was walking around bloated. I felt like a balloon. I felt like my body was just made of gas. And my digestion was so poor. I was severely constipated, and I was definitely not experiencing ease and balance. And I was wondering what's happening? Why is that happening? And I didn't think that I should have actually checked in with my own body or checked in with an actual person who can intuit or feel into what might be the problem. I had self-diagnosed by just reading a book or just getting a mechanical knowledge or the knowledge that you can find in a book. That also um, is something that really taught me a lot. I think that we always learn by making mistakes. That's one of the easiest ways to learn, just like when you're a child and you touch fire for the first time and you know, okay, this is not to be touched. So in the same way, I realized that there is some confusion and knew that raw food might not be the right thing for me. Later on, when I actually got to know myself better and studied properly, studied a little more in detail with a teacher, that's when I kind of realized what my mistake was back then. Similarly, I heard about the trend of the intermittent fasting, and for many, many years, for over a decade, I'm almost ashamed to say for how long that lasted, but for an incredible amount of time, I had chosen to not eat in the mornings. And my digestion, of course, had got used to that without realizing how negatively that was affecting my digestion. And basically, another thing that taught me was that when there is a trend or a fad, quite often we are all promoted it as a one size fits all, right? Like quite often we are told intermittent fasting is good for everyone. And when we hear something like this, we're like, okay, I will probably benefit from it as well. And then we try and do something which might actually not be applicable to who we are and to what we actually need. So only in the last couple of years when I finally realized my mistake and I started eating more accordingly to what the needs of my body are, I have been experiencing significant improvement in my digestion, in my overall health, and even in my moods, in my emotions, in my mind, because everything is connected. In Ayurveda, the body and the mind are not separate, which is really interesting. It's a very holistic way of seeing life, where we don't have the body doing one thing and the mind doing something else, and we are doing a third thing, but everything is one cohesive unit. And if our body is healthy, our mind is healthy. When our mind is at peace, the body feels more easeful. And in that sense, again, it links a lot with the teachings of yoga and meditation, where we do find that cohesiveness and balance at the level of body and mind evenly. So, do you have any questions, something that you would like to share? Feel free to interact. Feel free to pop messages in the chat. I will be really, really happy to hear your observations or any questions that might be there. Megan is asking, what is Veda? So, Megan, Veda literally means knowledge, but the Vedas are bodies of knowledge. Quite often people call them texts, but they aren't really texts because they were transmitted orally for thousands of years before written language existed, before written word. So bodies of knowledge that were chanted, they were transmitted orally through chants, through mantra, through sutras that were memorized and were repeated. So the disciples, the new students, the children, let's say, would sit in the presence of a teacher, studying those scripts, studying those bodies of knowledge, and then they would become teachers themselves and pass them on to the next generation. And it is said that the Vedas are a body of knowledge that is eternal. So even though they are dating back to 10,000 years ago, nobody really knows when exactly they date back to, because nobody can really trace knowledge that was not written. Like, we can only have history as far back as written word. But that is a knowledge that is eternal. And what is really interesting that is that, we quite often think that modern science has a lot of answers to our problems. And yet, even though science develops, and even though our modern society, our life changes and develops in a certain way, our lifestyle is very different to the lifestyle 10,000 years ago when the Vedas were written. We aren't very different. So we as species, humans as species, are the same as humans were 10,000 years ago. So it is the same body physiology, nervous system, mind that the Vedas spoke about, the same soul, the same essence that humans had back then as we do in modern times. So in many ways, what was relevant back 10,000 years ago can be very relevant to our lives, to our bodies, and to our lifestyle in modern days as well. Kirsty is asking, now that it is spring, do you have any lifestyle or diet recommendations that we can all follow? That's a wonderful question, Kirsty, and that kind of reminds us all that even though we all are unique and we all have a very unique needs and constitution, there are certain patterns and certain rhythms that we all are influenced by. And Ayurveda speaks about it. So with the change of seasons, there are changes in in the relationship, let's say, between the environment and our being. Just like there is a change, a shift that happens throughout the day with the circadian rhythm. So Ayurveda basically, let's start from there. Ayurveda speaks a lot about nature and how to restore balance as part of nature, is that form of remembrance that we belong to nature, that we are part of nature and not separate from it. So in the teachings of Ayurveda, when we find our own true nature and we realize that there are 5 elements in our body and mind, there is presence of earth, water, fire, air, and ether that constitute this mind body. And the same five elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, constitute everything in creation, everything in nature. And for some of us, there is a little more presence of the earth element or water element or fire element or air element or ether. Just like in all that we are in contact with, all that we are connected with, all that we relate to would have a specific elemental makeup. So, for example, the seasons, they all have a relevant element at work. And in the spring season in particular, there is a lot of presence of the earth and water element. So often, spring is a time that is quite moist or wet. There can be a lot of rain, and the earth can feel quite heavy because it's soaked with moisture from the winter just passed and also from the spring rains. And also, earth and water is fertility, right? Earth and water is creation, is the fertile space where plants can be seeded and will grow. So you can see the presence of earth and water in a lot of the processes or a lot of the elements in spring. Now, if there is a lot of earth and water present in spring, we would actually be looking at lifestyle and diet choices that come to balance the earth and the water elements. So when we think about earth and water, they're both quite heavy, right? In comparison with air, in comparison with fire, like these are elements that are subtler and lighter in their qualities, while earth and water are heavier and denser in their qualities. And again, in order to find balance, if we are experiencing a seasonal change that involves some of that heaviness, some of that fertile density, we would want to counteract that with some lightness in our diet and in our lifestyle. So perhaps eating food that is easier to digest. Leafy greens are amazing at this time of year, actually. And interestingly enough, if you observe well what vegetables are available naturally, seasonally, the gifts of our garden, whatever our garden is producing at any time of the year, is exactly what we need to balance the energies of the season or the elements of the season. So in spring, we get a lot of leafy greens, and this is actually some of the best food that we can be having at this time of year. And in terms of lifestyle, just making sure that we don't have lethargy and density in our daily routine can be a really good recommendation. So making sure that we wake up early, that we wake up with the sun, and that we engage in some form of cleanse or a detox. Like we all know about the spring cleanse and how important that is. And that can be something that we do for our house, but it can also be something that we do for our body to lighten up. So this is just one example, a couple of examples, and I hope that that's helpful, Kirsty. Let me know if that makes sense. Johnny is asking, you mentioned that falling for a fad like intermittent fasting was naive or not good for you. What was your intuition and how do you channel the energy to find out most easily what is good for you? Or how to find flow state? Obviously, most people are influenced by research and wisdom of peers, etc. Yes. So I think that being influenced, being informed by media or by our friends and their experience is great. Obviously, we are made to receive information and to process information. So it can be always very curious to research new things and to try things out. And yet, I think that has to come with a really good dose of self-knowledge. So Ayurveda speaks a lot about awareness and presence, knowing ourselves and knowing what works for us. So, in our original state of health and balance, we are all unique. If you look at the leaves of a tree or any other creation in nature, you will see that everything is unique and perfectly formed. And there is no two leaves that are the same, that there is no two snowflakes that are the same. Every creation in nature is so unique, and so are we. And so are we in this human body and in this human being. So we have to always enter a new practice with a mindset of curiosity rather than stubbornly thinking that this is it. Like if my friend Jody is doing this, this will be good for me. And to kind of follow up with this. Like I probably it was my bad that I was too stubborn and I didn't actually um, that I didn't actually listen to the signs of my body, to the response in my body, but was following through the regardless of that. So whenever we try something new, like trying and experimenting, there's nothing bad in that. Like we all should be doing that and enjoying the multiplicity of experiences we can be exposed to. But whenever we experience something new, maybe there can be a moment of mindfulness as to how does that make me feel? And again, practices like yoga and meditation can be really good for developing that witnessing attitude, that witnessing consciousness, that reflective consciousness. Like a yoga class, for example, in the end of a yoga class, if you have felt in your final relaxation a feedback from your body, it can be a little bit like that. Let's say an ice bath. Recently, these have become very popular, and many people love ice bathing and jumping into cold pools, plunging into cold pools. Now, I personally don't think that this is for everyone. Ayurveda wouldn't consider that to be good for everyone. And yet, the only way for us to know is to either know ourselves very, very well and to know that this should be good or this would never be a good choice, or to try it once and to really mindfully observe how our body reacted to it. So obviously, if we jumped into a cold pool and we came out and we had a cold, maybe our body isn't made for cold plunging. If it felt really good, if it felt really healing, if it felt like it helped us with inflammation or with stress, maybe it is good. Because you see, if we have a lot of cold quality, if we have a lot of coldness in our system, jumping into cold just wouldn't really make a lot of sense, would it? It wouldn't bring balance. It would be cold on cold, double cold. But if we have a lot of heat and a lot of inflammation in our body, of course, that will help the balance because we'll have heat and we'll have cold. And just like a scale, we have heat here, we have cold here, they balance each other. We may find that that actually creates a really good state of balance. So it's all about common sense. It's all about either knowing ourselves or knowing how to check in and listen to the responses to certain situations. And also trusting in our intuition and in our common sense. My teacher says that a lot, that Ayurveda is the science of common sense. So it is not rocket science really to know what your body may respond well to and what it may respond badly to. Um, because yeah, we are heavily influenced by research and influences, and it can happen that sometimes we do things mind over matter a little bit, that we kind of live up here and make all of our decisions just with our head, and we forget that there is a lot, a lot more to us than just the mind and just our cognitive knowledge, and forget that there is a whole nervous system, a whole body, a whole being that can also be participating in us making decisions and making choices. So this is a little bit of input on your question, Johnny. I hope that it makes sense. Bye, Melly. It was lovely to have you here. So Harriet is asking, what sort of cleanse can we do for our body in spring? So spring is a wonderful time to practice cleansing, and one really simple and beautiful way in which we can do that is by eating lighter. So I wouldn't recommend fasting for everyone. For many people, fasting can be good, either intermittent fasting or maybe like a 1 day fast. But again, that's not a one size fits all. Not everybody is made to fast. Sometimes, in fact, fasting, complete fast can increase our lightness, our quality of lightness, and our air element, the air element in our body. And that can create too much agitation in our mind because the energy of our mind elementally is also related to the air element. And if we increase the air in our body mind, we can feel a little bit anxious and a little bit scattered. There can be too much movement, too much lightness, too much air in our system. So let's say a more grounded and a more universal way to cleanse is by following a mono diet, which can be a simple cooked meal with some lentils and rice and digestive spices, and maybe cooked in ghee, which is one of the Ayurvedic superfoods. Ghee is clarified butter, so it's actually a dairy-free product, even though it's made out of butter. And it is an incredible digestive aid and also brings a lot of necessary fats and lubrication to our system, to our body. This is another thing that Ayurveda doesn't really agree with, this modern fad of not eating enough fats or considering that fat is shouldn't be in our diet. The truth is that fat is what our brain operates on. It is what feeds our brain. We would all know that we have to at least eat nuts to feed our brain, right? And that's because nuts are very rich in fat. So good fats, like certain oils, including ghee, are very, very good are very important, very necessary to sustain our body healthy and balanced. So we can prepare something called khichdi. It's a traditional Indian meal, which has now gained popularity around the world. And it's a very simple meal with digestive spices, cooked in ghee, and then mixed with boiled lentils and rice. Super simple, and yet it's nourishing and very, very conductive to our digestion, to the works of our digestion. So there is a meal that we can prepare and have 3 times a day for 1 full day or for 3 full days or for 5 full days. It's perfectly safe to go on a mono diet such as this because you get all the nutrients required. And that can be a wonderful way to kindle the digestion, to eat something that's light. And it will be a beautiful, beautiful reset, a beautiful option for a spring cleanse. Feel free to reach out if you would like the recipe. I can also share it maybe with the email that will follow this recording, and you can all give it a try and cook it at least once at home. It's one of those really beautiful, kind of universal, simple, but very nourishing meals that are related to the Ayurveda tradition. John is asking, is there anything in Ayurveda theory or practice that your body has on its on unique level protested against? Your body has on its own unique level protested against. Um, well, it's interesting because Ayurveda is not necessarily theory and practice. It is, again, living wisdom. It is experiential wisdom. And in that sense, everything is Ayurveda. So if something that was written in the books or that has been practiced for thousands of years by other people doesn't quite work for you or for me, that doesn't mean that that is Ayurveda and this is you. It means that Ayurveda, in applied manner to you, suggests something completely different. I personally haven't had any particular mis, let's say, negative experience with the teachings of Ayurveda, but I also know that they aren't fixed and that they are applied uniquely and differently for every individual and for every constitution. When you see an Ayurvedic doctor or a practitioner or a therapist, you would be approached in a way where your pulse will be checked and you would not be just given a solution that was given to the previous client or patient. You would be offered something that is very much curated specifically for you. And I think that for that reason, I have never experienced, let's say, when I have consulted someone with experience, I have never experienced any um, discomfort, or my body hasn't really protested against any of that. So I'll just give you an example. When I went to India this last time and the year before, my teacher would check my pulse, do a couple of assessments, and he would notice that there is a lot of dryness in the body and that there is a lot of coldness in the body. So, of course, in order to balance that, he would recommend to me therapies and practices that are warming and moisturizing. So, for 3 weeks in a row, I was receiving warm oil massages every single day. And oil, of course, has exactly these qualities. It's moist, it's oily, and it's warm. It's warming. So that, of course, will bring me back into balance because on one hand, dry and cold, on the other hand, um, oily and warm would balance each other out, would recreate that balance. But if it was me and I was experiencing a different condition where I was, let's say, if I had inflammation, if I had a rash, a skin rash, if I had um, an acid reflux or some other more fiery condition, I wouldn't be recommended to do anything that has warmth in it or or that has to do with oils. So there, the treatment and the approach to every individual is very multi-layered, and it's a lot more complex than oils are good for everyone, massages are good for everyone. Let's all experience massages because they will be amazing. It's really good to, as I said, to know yourself and also to talk to someone or to consult with someone who would have experience and knowledge of what would be right for you. Good. So I hope that that makes sense, and I love your questions. It's really wonderful to receive those and to see where you're at and what's interesting for you, what's on your mind and heart. Um, so I wanted to share with you today another couple of things that we all can apply in order to have a little more balance in our bodies. So, up until now, I have spoken about how we are all unique and how a different approach would apply for each and every one of us. How, on top of that, at every moment, we may be experiencing the influence of the element around us, such as the elements that are predominant in the specific season that we are in, or the elements that are predominant at a certain time of the day. Because even within the cycle of day and night, we get different influence by the five elements. There is more earth in the morning, more fire at noon, more air in the afternoon, and so on. All of these things are really curious to learn and to play with. Um, for women, there is even more to say about cycles and about the influence of the moon cycle in relation to the menstrual cycle. So we are constantly in that interconnectedness with nature and the rhythms of nature. And yet, I think that tonight I really wanted to also offer another couple of simple tools and simple practices that everyone can do and that are quite safe. Just like when Harriet asked about a simple cleanse that can be safe for everyone to do, I offer the kitchery as a simple suggestion, as a basic suggestion for a mono diet that can be done for a day or 3 days or multiple days. Um, so one thing that can be really, really helpful, something that I think everyone can benefit from, is taking care of our digestion, because our digestive fire is where a lot of our energy comes from. So we all know that one of the main sources of energy that we receive on a daily basis, one of our main batteries for vitality, for um, strength and energy, is food, the food that we eat. This is why in Ayurveda, food is considered also a form of medicine. And it is said that if our food is right, there is no need for medicine, because the food in itself can be our medicine. So there is a digestive fire called Agni in Sanskrit that is something we can cherish and kindle. And by doing so, the food that we eat will be able to transform into life force, into prana, into energy. And that is relevant for everyone. So, regardless of what elements are constituting our unique body and what elements are in the environment that we are interacting with, if we have a strong digestive fire, that can pretty much always grant us a state of more vitality and well-being. So that's important because, quite often we focus on what we eat and we can get very, very religious about what we eat. But actually, even if we eat the best food in the world, even if you eat the most nutrient-rich food, and even if you take the best brand of supplements, if our digestive fire isn't actually able to process those, we aren't getting the most out of it. We aren't really receiving the gifts of that food or that supplement. So it's important to kindle and to harness our digestion. And one of the top things that we can do to do that is to not drink water that is colder than room temperature. And I love giving that advice to pretty much anyone that I see privately for an Ayurveda consultation, because I find that that's one of the most common mistakes that we do. drinking cold water, keeping our water in the fridge, and then taking it out to serve ourselves, especially in summer. And also the other one is drinking soda water or drinking water that has been carbonated and that has more air in it than it really should. So these two things make the water pretty much um, detrimental for our digestive fire. So when we drink water that is too cold, it extinguishes our digestion. It basically completely kills our digestive fire. And that would mean that our fire needs to rekindle, and it can take time. So even if you do have a colder drink, have it very separate to any meal that you might be having. Have it hours in between your meals so that your digestion may rekindle. But if you can stop drinking cold drinks, and particularly iced and refrigerated drinks, that would be the best. I always recommend to people that our main hydration comes from water that is stored in a bottle at room temperature or even warmer than room temperature. So drinking hot water, drinking warm water is incredible. Just that can be a way in which you detox and cleanse your body, you wash your body from the inside on a daily basis. Plus, it's really obvious in the ways it affects your digestion. Now, some people say that it is better not to drink water at all while eating. What I have learned from my personal experience, experimenting with it, is that if our food is dry, it is actually good to be sipping on water while eating, but small sips and again, rather warm water over a cold drink. So that's one tip. Like, even if you just take this one tip out of this whole session and try it out and implement it, that will be incredible. And I think that you will really notice the change. Now, speaking about Agni and our digestion finds it easier to process cooked food. I know that there is a lot of nutrients and a lot of vitality in fresh and raw produce, yet not everyone has the digestive fire to process that. And actually, when we cook our food, we already start the digestion process in our pan or in our pot, and then our body has a lot less work to do to receive the nutrients of the food. Ayurveda speaks a lot about digestive spices. I mentioned already the use of ghee as a superfood, as something that can really transform any food into a more easily digested and more nutrient-rich meal. And also, when it comes to digestion, remember that rest and digest come together. So it is good to rest after food rather than rush around or walk around or eat in the middle of doing other things. So even if you just remember these few simple advices, I think they can have a huge impact. Try to approach your food as medicine the next time you come to eat. And while looking at your plate, for example, or while looking at your choice of food for that moment, take a little moment to feel into its presence and to ask yourself, is this really medicine for me? Is this going to benefit me? And I think that we are all conscious beings and we can all, if inquiring properly, we can all have that intuition of what serves us and what doesn't. So take the time to really connect with your food. Maybe give gratitude for your food before you start eating and eat mindfully. And even through that act of mindful eating, you will see that a lot more gets absorbed, and that food becomes medicine for you rather than something that is heavy or making you feel sick, or something that you just have to get through because you're in a rush and there is something more important to do in your day. And just like we digest with our digestive fire, with the Agni in our stomach, another thing that I will share here with you as a little tip is to remember that everything else that we consume, because we don't just consume with our mouth and with our stomach, everything else that we consume can have that quality of purity and being a medicine for us or not. Ayurveda says that anything and everything can be a poison or a medicine, depending on how we use it, who uses it, and why they use it. So there is nothing that is just bad or just good. And yet, there is a simple rule that you can choose to follow, which is that whenever you put something on your body, on your skin, for example, remember that the skin too interacts and digests the input. So, for example, creams that we choose to use, or lotions, or soaps, or even the clothes that we wear, they give us certain information to our body. And the simple rule in Ayurveda is that we never put on our skin anything that we wouldn't otherwise put in our mouth. Because if we consider it poisonous or dangerous for us to eat or ingest, why do we think that ingesting it through the skin is any better? So there is also digestion that happens through all of our senses, and also through the skin as one of the sensory organs. So that's another little tip and another field of contemplation for you to have, that can align you to some of the Ayurveda principles, those principles of reclaiming our connection to nature, reclaiming a connection to ourself, and remembering that life and knowing life can be something very simple. It can be a day-to-day practice. It can literally be done in the form of small acts of mindfulness, small acts of awareness and presence throughout our day. And I'm just aware of the time. It's already 7 o'clock, and I want to wrap up here for now. Just before we go, I wanted to mention that there is a lot more to say about Ayurveda. I'm very far from the idea that I've given you everything that can be known and that can be experienced in that realm. And if you would like to learn more, and if you choose to learn with me, I will be starting a 10-week program in the start of October. So that will run all the way up until the end of November, and we will have actually the start of December. That's 10 weeks from the start of October until the beginning of December. And we will have 8 live calls or group calls where I will be sharing some teachings. There will be space for a lot more interaction than we have had the chance to have tonight. And also, in between sessions, there will be a lot of practical things for you to explore, to try, to apply to your life. Because Living Ayurveda, which is the name of the program, was really created so that Ayurveda can enter your day-to-day life. So that it's not just a theoretical knowledge, something that we learn from a book or from a teacher, but it's something that you try on yourself, by yourself, and you see the results or not. That's the best way to learn, really. When you have some guidance, but then you actually have things, tools to imply and to try out at home. So there will be some education, there will be a really good presentation of all the basic principles and terminology of Ayurveda that you may benefit from knowing. But the focus really is on the embodied experience and the practices that you'll be given, because the idea is to really empower you to know what's best for you. And what's included in the program is weekly live calls, as I already mentioned, including recordings, so that you don't have to always be present for the group calls. In fact, sometimes people just choose to watch the recordings and do the program in a more offline manner. There will be an online platform where you can access all the recordings, plus a lot of additional material, recipes, tools, suggestions, a lot of materials that will be also available. And of course, there is a beautiful community that is formed. There is a WhatsApp group that is available during the duration of the course, where people usually exchange a lot of experience about what they tried and what worked for them and what didn't. And that can create a really beautiful environment of learning. And finally, another thing that I have included is a one-on-one call with me. It's not a full consultation, but at least half an hour to have a private chat and to clarify anything and everything that you may be working on or curious about or interested in more specifically. So if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out. Tomorrow I will send you all a recording of this meeting, so you all have my email address, and I will give you a little more details about where you can read about Living Ayurveda and all of that. So feel free to ask me any questions you may have. Does anyone have any final things to share or any final questions for this time together? Or any comments, anything that you might have come come out with after this time together. Mhm. Feel free to unmute yourself as well if writing is too
Hi,
much.
Rada.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, thank you for your talk. It's been really interesting. Like you say, it's common sense, a lot
Yes.
of it. It kind of makes sense if, I guess, if you tune into and you choose to tune into those things, which a lot of people don't. And I'm thinking about you're thinking about food as medicine and best, I guess, insurance policy for your health, I guess. And then you think about, I don't know, sitting down with a feed of KFC or whatever, and you're like, you know.
Mm.
So
Yeah, so true.
yeah.
You're very welcome, Megan. Thank you for being here.
Oh, any suggestions? So in terms of you wouldn't put on your face what you wouldn't eat. I guess you're saying you're making avocado oil or oil for your skin, things like that.
Mm. Yeah. Literally, you can smother your face with all the oils you would use for cooking. They're all so much better option than some of the petroleum-based creams that we commonly use. So avocado oil is wonderful. Even ghee that I spoke about, that's such
Wow.
an elixir for the skin. Um, Sesame oil is great. Actually, different skin types may benefit from different oil as well. So it's good to also know the qualities or the properties of the oils and also the quality of our skin. So if our skin is drier, maybe heavier oils are better. If our skin is sensitive, something like coconut oil is a little lighter and a little more cooling. So if we have redness or inflammation in our skin, maybe coconut oil is the best. So again, it would be good to feel into what your skin really needs is nourishment and go with that. But that can really be as simple as we go about our choices of cosmetics. The more natural, the better. We are nature, right? Like this body is made of the same elements as the oils in nature and the plants. So yeah, that's always the best choice.
Thank you, Rada. Just one other little quick one. What about sunscreen? That's all full of chemicals and stuff. So any
Not
thoughts there?
necessarily, not necessarily. There is a lot of natural sunscreens that are available. And I don't know where you are based, Megan. For example, here in Hawke's Bay, are you in Hawke's Bay as well? Yeah, the Millstream Gardens. They're just down the road in central Hawke's Bay. Everything is grown locally, and they only have natural ingredients in the sunscreen. So that's without this being an ad. This is just my personal suggestion for a product that's actually really skin friendly and health friendly. And I'm sure that there is many, many other options that are available that's just nice and local as well. And also cocoa butter, just pure cocoa butter can be put on the skin, and that has a lot of sunscreen properties, sun protection properties. Yeah, there is always a solution. I think that there is always something that we can find that is already provided by nature in its original state.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Wonderful. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your questions. It's been so wonderful to share a little bit about Ayurveda with you. It's a topic and the field that I'm so passionate about, and I would really love to keep in connection with you. So, as I said, feel free to reach out with questions if you ever wanted a consultation or to get to know more about your constitution. That's also something that you can book with me. Otherwise, I hope that the tips that I've shared tonight and some of the insights that have been shared will be helpful to you in your life, in your days. Go well, be healthy, be balanced, be well. Sending you all lots of blessings. Thank you. Go well. Have a beautiful evening, everyone. Bye bye.